Good morning to all our listeners tuning into Hot Topic and Fresh News. Today, June 22, 2024, at 5:45 in the morning, we delve into a contentious issue shaking the political landscape in the United Kingdom. Nigel Farage, leader of the political party Reform UK, has stirred controversy with his remarks suggesting that the West, specifically through the expansion of the European Union and NATO, provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine. While Farage admits the ultimate blame lies with Russian President Vladimir Putin, he insists that NATO's eastward expansion gave Putin leverage to claim a threat against Russia. Moving on, Farage's comments have triggered a wave of criticism from multiple fronts. James Cleverly, the Conservative Home Secretary, has accused Farage of echoing Putin's justification for the war, a sentiment echoed by Labour representatives and other political figures across Europe. In other news, Farage also criticized the Conservative Party's handling of Brexit, claiming it failed to meet the expectations of those who voted for it, particularly in terms of reducing immigration, as net migration figures have risen driven largely by non-EU nationals. On climate change, Farage expressed skepticism about the crisis, labeling the Labour and Tory net zero policies as nonsensical and overly expensive. He claims abandoning these could save the UK £30 billion a year. Lastly, Reform UK has faced its own internal challenges with candidate vetting, attributing failures to external companies hired before elections. This discussion forms part of the broader political discourse as the UK gears up for the general election, with Farage's viewpoints and the party's strategy under intense scrutiny. Stay tuned for more detailed analysis and discussion on these developing stories. Hello, everyone! I'm your host, Emily, reporting from New York City.
And I'm David, joining in from San Francisco.
Together, we're here to bring you the latest and most critical stories on Hot Topic and Fresh News. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our news coverage. Now, straight to the hot topics. Continuing our discussion on the recent remarks made by Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK has been under fire for his comments on the BBC, suggesting the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding the European Union and NATO eastwards. Farage emphasized that while he acknowledges the war is President Vladimir Putin's fault, he believes the expansion gave Putin a narrative to tell the Russian people that they're coming for us again. These comments have not been taken lightly. James Cleverly, the Conservative Home Secretary, accused Farage of echoing Putin's justification for the war. The Labour defense spokesman also chimed in, stating that Farage's stance makes him unfit for political office. It's a strong wave of criticism from multiple sides, highlighting a significant clash of perspectives within British politics.
That's quite a statement from Farage. Has there been any response from other international figures or authorities on this matter?
Yes, indeed. Former NATO Secretary General Lord Robertson accused Farage of parroting the Kremlin's line, denouncing it as making excuses for the brutal and unprovoked attack on Ukraine. Moreover, during a radio interview on BBC Radio 4's The World Tonight, Nigel Farage claimed that Lord Robertson had agreed the war was caused by the expansion of the EU. However, Lord Robertson has outright denied that claim, calling it complete nonsense.
Seems like Farage's comments are reopening old debates about the role of NATO and the EU in international politics, particularly in relation to Russia. How are these remarks likely to impact Reform UK's position in the upcoming general election?
That's a good question. Farage's remarks could either galvanize a segment of the electorate that shares his views or alienate potential voters who see his comments as too sympathetic to Russia's actions. With the general election on the horizon, the political temperature is definitely heating up, and how this plays out for Reform UK could be pivotal.
With Farage claiming that the West provoked Russia, how are these remarks being perceived in broader European political circles?
Guy Verhofstadt, a Belgian member of the European Parliament and a vocal critic of Farage, has accused him of parroting Kremlin talking points. According to Verhofstadt, Farage has historically defended Putin's actions in the European Parliament, suggesting that every vote for Farage is effectively celebrated in Moscow.
And what about Farage's stance on Brexit? How does he reconcile his leadership with the current immigration trends in the UK?
Farage has been quite vocal about his dissatisfaction with how Brexit has been handled, particularly concerning immigration. He argues that while Brexit itself isn't a failure since the UK has indeed left the European Union, it has failed to deliver on the promise of reducing immigration. Farage points out that net migration has actually increased since the UK left the EU, driven primarily by non-EU nationals.
On that note, how is Reform UK positioning itself on the immigration issue in the upcoming elections?
Reform UK is advocating for a freeze on non-essential immigration. They believe this will alleviate pressure on housing and public services, potentially increase wages, and protect what they describe as the UK's cultural identity and values. It's a stance that might resonate with voters who are concerned about immigration levels but could also alienate those who view such measures as too restrictive.
To be honest, I didn't quite get that. Could you explain that news headline in a different way?
Absolutely. Essentially, Nigel Farage and Reform UK are leveraging Brexit's perceived failures on immigration to propose strict measures. They argue that halting non-essential immigration will address issues like housing shortages and strained public services, while also preserving cultural values, a message aimed at tapping into the concerns of certain voter segments who feel the impact of high immigration levels. Moving on to another contentious issue, Nigel Farage recently lambasted the Conservative Party for what he describes as abandoning their commitment to scrap 4,000 EU laws, which was a key promise they made. He's openly critical of the Conservatives, suggesting they never truly supported Brexit but merely used it as a political stepping stone.
That's quite the accusation. How does Farage view his role if he were in charge?
Farage is quite bold in his assertions. He believes that if he were in charge, the approach to Brexit and its aftermath would be very, very different. He argues that the current leadership has failed to deliver on their promises, which he says proves their lack of genuine commitment to Brexit.
And what about his views on other pressing issues like climate change?
Farage seems to be skeptical about the current narrative surrounding climate change. He mentioned that there's been too much emphasis on fear rather than focusing on practical solutions. He criticized both the Labour and Conservative parties' net zero policies as nonsense, claiming that abandoning these climate commitments could save around $30 billion a year.
There's also been some controversy surrounding Reform's candidate vetting process. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, there's been a bit of a stir there. The party faced issues with their vetting procedures after having to drop several candidates for making inappropriate or offensive remarks. Farage distanced himself from these blunders by blaming an external company hired for background checks and asserted that these incidents occurred before he declared a more active involvement in the party's campaign.
Interesting. With Farage taking over leadership so recently, it must be a challenging time for Reform UK leading up to the election.
Absolutely, and with the general election looming, all eyes will be on how these controversies and Farage's outspoken views might impact Reform UK's appeal to voters. It's certainly setting the stage for what could be a very dynamic election cycle. Thanks for tuning into Hot Topic in Fresh News today. We dove deep into the complexities of the UK's political landscape and the unfolding general election drama. It's been great having you all here. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share our content. Every like, comment, and share helps us bring you more of the news that matters.
And hey, who knows what exciting news tomorrow might bring? Make sure you're with us again, same time, same channel. It's always a bit more fun when you know a bit more about what's going on in the world, right?
Absolutely, and we truly appreciate your support and engagement. We're looking forward to bringing you more insightful discussions and exclusive stories.
Yeah, keep those comments coming. We love seeing what you think. And remember, there's always something interesting up ahead that you won't want to miss.
Stay in the loop, keep your eyes on the news, our channel's content will amuse.